Honda is the world's largest motorcycle manufacturer currently as well as of all time. And you don't get to this level of sales success without producing some truly iconic bikes. And Honda certainly has many of those, so many in fact that there's probably going to be pushback to whatever 10 models I choose for this list. And if I miss your favorite, I apologize. Please feel free to remind me in the comments below. It's no secret that I like Hondas. We've owned 3 Honda motorcycles and 1 Honda car over the years, and I've had exactly one reliability problem with one of them, a burnt out fuse. I bought a new fuse for $5, put it in the bike, and never had another problem again. That's why I like Hondas, that and their thoughtful design and high level fit and finish. So without further ado, let's get on with the list of the 10 greatest Honda motorcycles. And as always, if you're enjoying the content, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and sharing it with friends. First, a couple of ground rules. I'm talking about street legal motorcycles here, so bikes like the iconic CR500, which won 9 motocross world championships in a row, are not included. That one would definitely make the top 10 dirt bikes though. Also, even though Honda has made some of the best scooters in the world, I'll confine this comparison to motorcycles. The one of the top 10 will definitely have some scooter features, and if you know Honda, you will know which one that is. Finally, I tried to get a variety of bikes from standard to sport, sport touring, commuting, and adventure, because I don't want to leave out any demographics. Let's start with a few honorable mentions. The Dream was the first full motorcycle Honda made in 1949, and it pumped out a whole 3 horsepower out of its 98cc 2-stroke engine. It's famous for being first. The CBX 1000 was an inline-6 air-cooled motorcycle which looked like a normal bike into which someone had stuffed a car engine. It's famous for being weird and cool. The Valkyrie is basically a cruiser with a hopped-up Goldwing Flat 6, which was unique for being the only Japanese cruiser back then that was not trying to be a Harley. And that cool commercial. There were other significant Hondas of course, but those are the ones that stand out to me. But now, getting into the top 10, in 10th place we have the Grom, Honda's quintessential mini-moto. This thing is the fastest and best handling on pavement of all the 124cc Honda mini-motos and is the most like a big motorcycle because it has a real clutch and a 5-speed gearbox. It can hit 55 miles per hour or 90 kilometers per hour and has a huge community and an extensive aftermarket which can turn it into a racer, touring bike, custom, or even an off-roader. It's light, responsive, and plenty of fun, and makes a great city runabout as long as you're not going on the highway. In 9th spot, we have the other end of the performance spectrum, the CB 1100 XX Blackbird. From 1996 to 1999, this was the world's fastest production motorcycle, outpacing the Kawasaki ZX-11 by clocking in at about 177 miles per hour or 285 kilometers per hour, thanks to its very impressive, for the time, 164 horsepower. Despite the fact that it was heavy and had a too soft suspension to handle really well around corners, it looked awesome and made a wonderful sport tourer. Of course, in 1999, the Hayabusa came out and dusted the Blackbird, which remained in production until 2007. Now, in the 90s, superbike racing allowed either 750cc 4-cylinders or 1000cc twins, and at the time the 750cc Japanese 4s were getting their butts handed to them on a regular by a certain Italian manufacturer of L-twins. So Honda, with its massive resources, decided that if you can't beat them, you should join them, and built the number 8 bike on this list, the RC51. This thing was a seriously overbuilt 999cc V-twin sport bike designed for the sole purpose of beating Ducati in the World Superbike Championship. When it came out in 2000, Honda put it in the hands of Colin Edwards and Nicky Hayden and let them go to town. Edwards won 2 World Superbike Championships on it, and Hayden became the youngest AMA Superbike champion on one at the age of 21 before moving up to MotoGP. The street version of this bike, while it was heavier than the competition, is remembered fondly and prized by the lucky few who still own one. In 7th place, I put the Africa Twin, which is one of the OG adventure motorcycles and is still among the most desirable ADV bikes in production today. From its introduction in 1988 as a 650cc V-twin, which was based on the Dakar-winning XR V650, to today's 1084cc parallel twin, This bike has been one of the go-to adventure motorcycles. It has a unique combination of pavement and off-road ability coupled with Japanese reliability and has built a huge fan base among the Gore-Tex crowd. It's comfortable, modern, good-looking, a rarity among adventure bikes, and does pretty well on and off pavement. And of course, like most Hondas, it's super refined. Check out my review of the latest Africa Twin Adventure Sports in the top right corner. Now these days, the V4 is the engine architecture of choice in superbikes, but as was often the case, Honda was way ahead of its time when it introduced the 6th place bike on this list, the VF750F Interceptor. This motorcycle came out in 1983 with the purpose of winning the AMA Superbike class, which for that year was limited to 750cc. The VF750F was effectively the first replica racer. It did have some very un-Honda-like reliability problems with premature cam wear due to insufficient lubrication, which Honda had to recall and fix. However, it was light and powerful for its time, 86 horsepower and 250 kilograms or 550 pounds wet, and it won 2 AMA Superbike championships. Additionally, it is even more significant for bringing the V4 engine architecture to Honda sport bikes, spawning the future V4 models. And one of these was the 5th place bike on our list, the VFR 750F Interceptor, which was seriously over-engineered to avoid the previous bike's reliability issues. This motorcycle, introduced in 1986, would become a legend and position itself as perhaps the most iconic sport tourer of all time. Eventually, it evolved into the VFR 800 Interceptor and even introduced VTEC to motorcycles, which opened 2 valves at lower revs for improved torque response and 4 above 7,000 RPM for a harder top-end hit. Honda angled away from racing V4s at this time, but the smooth performance, reliability, and relatively light weight made the VFRs absolutely loved by sporty riders who didn't need to see them winning superbike races on Sunday to appreciate that they had something special on their hands. As for racing, Honda was angling toward inline 4s, which in 1992 were still limited to 750cc. But on the street, no one is limiting the size of your engine, so Honda, which had a 750cc research model called the CBR 750RR, decided to increase the stroke to punch out the engine to 893cc. They then shoehorned that big motor into what was basically a 600 chassis and produced a bike which blew every other sport bike of the time out of the water. The 4th bike on the list of most awesome Honda motorcycles is none other than the first Fireblade, the CBR 900RR, a bike that changed motorcycling forever. It was pumping out a massive, for the time, 136 horsepower while weighing 450 pounds, about the same as a 600cc Supersport. It was 76 pounds lighter than the second lightest open-class sport bike, Yamaha's FZR 1000, and absolutely whipped the competition around the track. This motorcycle set off an arms race among sport bike manufacturers, which eventually led to the introduction of bikes like the Kawasaki ZX-9R, Yamaha R1, and Suzuki GSX-R 1000. And that makes the CBR 900RR one of the most significant sport motorcycles of all time. But now we're in the top 3, and here we get real iconic because 3rd on the list is the Goldwing, the ultimate touring motorcycle. This one's as old as I am, being first introduced in 1974 and going on sale in 1975 as the GL 1000, Honda's biggest motorcycle. Honda aimed the bike at touring riders and built it around a 999cc flat 4 liquid-cooled engine and an underseat fuel tank for a low center of gravity. The engineers also gave it a low-maintenance shaft drive. The original bike was naked, but the aftermarket stepped in immediately with fairing and luggage options, which made the Goldwing the best long-distance tourer in the world. Eventually, the wing grew to 1100, then 1200, then 1500, and now 1800cc, and gained a stock fairing and integrated luggage as well as 2 more cylinders. It pioneered such things as air suspension and reverse gear on motorcycles, and has, over the last 50 years, built a huge community of long-distance riders, many of whom will take nothing else on a long tour. 2-up or solo, the Goldwing is brilliant, and although some accuse it of being too car-like, its refinement is unmatched and its low center of gravity makes it the lightest feeling motorcycle in the heavyweight tourer category, and one of the best handling too. Check out my full review of the current Goldwing Tour in the top right corner. At number 2, I have the Honda that many will argue should be number 1, the Super Cub. Introduced way back in 1958 and making a huge splash in America, accompanied by the "You Meet the Nicest People on a Honda" campaign, one of the most brilliant pieces of marketing in history, the Super Cub, which has ranged in displacement from 49 to 124cc, has been in continuous production since then. It is the highest selling motorcycle of all time and the highest selling motor vehicle of all time, surpassing 100 million units sold. And it includes a couple of sister models like the Trail 125, a motorcycle I tested on this channel. Check out that video in the top right corner. It is innovative with a handy semi-auto transmission and keyless start, but also utilitarian, efficient, reliable, reasonably priced, and super stylish. It is not just one of the most iconic Hondas of all time, it is one of the most iconic motor vehicles of all time, and can be found all over the world, fulfilling a number of roles, including as a commuter, a taxi, and family transportation. Few motorcycles can match the status of the Super Cub. But one that can is the most significant Honda motorcycle of all time, the CB750. This bike beats the Super Cub because its introduction caused a bigger splash in the motorcycle industry, especially among heavyweight motorcycle manufacturers. Some say this is the bike that killed the British motorcycle industry after its introduction in 1969, which has some truth to it. If it didn't kill the British bikes of the time, it was the final nail in their coffin. At a time when most motorcycles in its class had twin-cylinder engines and a couple had triples, the CB750 had an inline 4. It had a disc brake up front when the competition was still sporting drums. It had a top speed of 120 miles per hour or 193 kilometers per hour, 20 miles and over 30 kilometers per hour faster than the rest. And it was reliable, not finicky, and didn't leak oil, which at the time was unusual. The CB750 won the Daytona 200 on its first try, was named to the Discovery Channel's Greatest Motorbikes Ever list, was featured in the Art of the Motorcycle exhibition, the UK National Motor Museum, was included among the AMA Motorcycle Hall of Fame classic bikes, and shifted the center of large motorcycle production from the UK and US to Japan. It became the template for all UJMs, Universal Japanese Motorcycles, a lightweight inline-4 high-performance machine. It was a paradigm shift in motorcycling and set new standards for performance, reliability, fit and finish, and value. After the CB750, no one in the West could claim that Japan produced cheap little bikes for teenagers. It kicked Harley's, Triumphs, and BSA's butts. Where the "You Meet the Nicest People on a Honda" campaign introduced smaller Hondas into the American market, the CB750 wiped out the big British bikes and almost did the same to Harley-Davidson. Its influence is hard to understate, and because the splash it made was more significant than the Super Cubs, in my opinion anyways, it sits on top as the most important Honda of all time. A strong argument can be made that it's the most important motorcycle of all time. But of course there will be lots of disagreement on that front, so if you think I'm full of it, or worse, I've left out an important Honda model, please let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, ride safe, check out some of these other videos you may find interesting, and may the spokes be with you.